I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. We recently celebrated a wonderful milestone, the 7-year anniversary of the formation of the Lonely Leader. And during the last 7 years, it has been my immense privilege and honour to work with such a diverse range of people and leaders in a multitude of different organisations and sectors and countries all around the world. And when I stop and take the time to reflect on that 7-year period, one thing is blatantly clear, that the themes that I discuss most regularly are relevant irrespective of age, seniority, sector, country. There are things that come up time and time again in my training sessions, in my mentoring work, and in the coaching work I do at the Lonely Leader. So I thought it would be appropriate to pull out the 7 most frequently discussed themes over the last 7 years. They've been a constant. I don't believe they're going anywhere. I think they are challenges that we will all wrestle with. And as I walk you through them today, I'm sure one, if not all of them, will resonate as something you are struggling with. Now, as I've always said with the Lonely Leader podcast, it's designed to address the challenges that I most frequently see. So no surprise, as I pick on some of these themes, I will give you a nod back to episodes in the back catalogue that you may have listened to before. And I would say we'll go back and refresh whether you have actually actioned some of the steps and tips within those. And perhaps you're new to the podcast and you're a little bit overwhelmed. You look and go, well, there's 130 episodes. Which one's relevant to me? This may help today signpost you back to some of those episodes. So let's kick things off. In no particular order, the first theme that I would talk about is loneliness. Leadership is, unfortunately for many people, isolating. It creates a pressure and a sort of deluded sense, if you will, of I should have all the answers. I'm not sure what to say or do here. I don't want to show weakness. I don't want to show vulnerability. I'm not sure what I should say when I'm managing up because I don't want to show weakness to my bosses. And I'm not sure what I should say when I'm managing down into my team because they're all looking to me for strength and to have all the answers. So there's this strange narrative. And I start with that for a reason because I wrestled with it at times when I was a CEO, and it was the driving force for calling this business the Lonely Leader. So many people are operating with a sense of loneliness and isolation, and leadership, irrespective of your seniority, even the most senior leadership roles, do not and should not come with a sense of loneliness and isolation. So if I was to give you a couple of recommendations, I would say check out episode number 30, Preventing Loneliness in Leadership. I would encourage you to look at episode 103, Escaping Leadership Loneliness, the Art of Building Powerful Support Networks. And I would also look at episode number 106, When Performance Stops Feeling Worth It. These are all episodes that talk specifically to the loneliness and isolation of leadership. The next core theme is burnout. People are worried about whether they're going to damage themselves physically or mentally. They're feeling out of sorts and not quite sure what's going on and perhaps are on that slippery slope towards burnout, or just have an awareness that so many people around them are struggling either with their physical or mental health and well-being, and they want to future-proof themselves against those stresses, particularly as they move into more and more senior leadership positions. So the topic of burnout and its various nuances and elements is something that I talk about on an almost weekly basis. So episodes to check out within this theme would start with episode number 9, Warning Signs of Burnout and Tips to Prevent It. If you've listened to my podcast previously or worked with me, you'll know that an epiphany moment for me was collapsing with the pneumonia virus, which was a physical manifestation of burnout, having been working at an unsustainable level of intensity, 15-hour days for many, many months. And in that enforced 2 weeks off work, as I lay in hospital, my phone taken away from me, I was forced to reflect on what got me here and how can I prevent it. So there are 2 or 3 episodes that have some overlapping themes, but in essence are doing just that, sharing my story, giving you things to look out for and giving you tips to try and avoid it. So I would also encourage you to check out episode 23, Lessons Learned from Burnout, and then also episode 71, which is all about holiday illness. Now, interestingly, holiday illness, when I do group work and individual work, I'll always ask the room, who struggles with holiday illness? Who finds that whenever they go on a family holiday vacation, that immediately there's some sort of reaction, they come down with a head cold, flu, or even something more serious? That is something I succumbed to time and time again. It was a warning sign that I ignored, and I now know, with the benefit of hindsight, that if you are driving yourself on a stress hormone of cortisol and pushing through endless challenges, when that stress is removed, i.e., you stop working temporarily, your immune system's compromised. It's been used to fueling and operating under these stress hormones. The stress hormone goes, and your body immediately succumbs to something. So, an episode there that I would encourage everybody to listen to. All the high performers, it's not an admission of weakness. The reality is I get so many nods, knowing glances, and then when I ask for confirmation, hands raised, when I say to people, how often do people succumb to holiday illness? It is the norm, unfortunately, so an important one to listen to. Now, I'll cheat and I'll call this theme 2B. It could be a standalone theme in its own right, but the notion of recovery. So many high performers neglect the fact that we cannot just push ourselves relentlessly without any focus on recovery. I apologize for those that have heard me say this a million times, but if you look at elite athletes, high performers in athletic endeavors, they train with intensity, compete with intensity, and have mandatory periods of recovery. We all know that to be true, and yet why is it when we step into industry, we lose sight of the fact that if we don't recover mentally and physically, we can't sustain the highest levels of performance. So in order to prevent burnout, the key step is to focus on our recovery. There are a raft of episodes on this, but if I was to pick out one in particular, I would say let's look to episode 54, the power of rest and unleashing high performance through recovery. The third theme, and it's one that I would guarantee at some point you have wrestled with. If you haven't, good for you. Please do get in touch, because I haven't met a client yet in the last 7 years that hasn't at some point mentioned to me the immortal phrase, I think I'm struggling a little bit with imposter syndrome. So there's a standalone episode on imposter syndrome, episode 20. Without spoiling that for you, my big belief is that we're not imposters. Yes, there are some examples. If I wanted to be a concert pianist and I went out on stage right now to a packed out Albert Hall or a stadium somewhere in the world, I would be an imposter. I am not a concert pianist, but that's an extreme example. I think for the vast majority of us, imposter syndrome is just a sign that we are growing, and that is a good thing. We are constantly putting ourselves into new environments, more senior environments, whether that's stepping into certain boardrooms, meetings, one-to-one conversations, new roles. Of course, it feels uncomfortable, but everything did. When we were learning to walk, it was uncomfortable. Learning to ride a bike, it was uncomfortable. When we were trying to graduate, if we went to college, it was uncomfortable. When we started our first job, it was uncomfortable. And gradually we adapt, and that becomes second nature. When we first get into a manual shift car and you're trying to accelerate, control the clutch, the biting point, change gear, check your mirrors, indicate, pull out into traffic, it feels impossible. And yet now it's a cliched analogy you've heard many times. People are driving along with a sandwich in one hand, a Starbucks in the other, they're texting on their knees, they're looking at the road, and they're doing it all at once. Now, I'm not advocating you do that, by the way. I'm being a bit ridiculous in my example, but the illustration is a perfect example for this. We don't think about changing gear in a car anymore. It just happens automatically. And that's the same with any role we're going into. We must retain our ambition. We must not call ourselves an imposter. We are just uncomfortable because it's new. And rather than suppress your performance and your potential for growth by saying, this isn't me, I'm an imposter, let's step right into the heart of it and say, how do I learn? Where are my gaps? Where are my knowledge gaps? Where are my skills gaps? Let me get after them, close them, so that I no longer feel a sense of being an imposter. I am comfortable with the level I am now operating at. And then guess what? We'll go again. We'll move up again. You'll feel it again, and we'll address it again. So do not feel frustrated if you sometimes wrestle with this. As I say, this is one universally applicable frustration. I've heard it from everybody I've worked with, even the ones that you would say, well, they would never feel it. They're at the top of the game. They're a CEO. They're in the C-suite. Everybody feels it at some point, and I was no different. The fourth theme I want to talk about is standards. And there's a danger that you sound like, well, the old wizened old leader, well, back in my day, standards were higher. And we all can be guilty of rolling our eyes when people who have walked the path ahead of us start talking with rose-tinted spectacles about the good old days and how things used to be. So let's park that objection, because it is a theme that I see universally across everybody I'm working with, that there is a frustration in terms of the standard we are holding ourselves to and a standard we are holding each other to, and almost an inherent fear of causing offence in modern day society at actually giving people some critical feedback that they are falling below a standard. Now, that is multifaceted, and this is probably a good moment to mention something that I'm hugely excited about, which is the launch of the Lonely Leader Academy. This is our online virtual leadership development platform. It's deliberately designed to address some of the core themes that we see day in, day out, to meet you at a time, place, and pace that suits you. We know everybody's busy. We know the demands of fatherhood, motherhood, whether you've got a partner, you might be caring for elderly relatives, parents, you've got multiple roles in your personal life and pressures in your professional life. And then, oh, James, don't mention another development tool I need to use. And that's why it's designed to be accessible as and when you need it. It's not a linear program. You tap in, tap out, you do things as and when it feels appropriate, but it's deliberately designed to go deep, to give you reflective questions that are going to really allow you to course correct and to make the changes, not just to benefit you as an individual, but to make you a better leader, to let you get more out of the people around you. Why do I mention it now? Well, standards is one of the core tenements. There's a whole module with a whole raft of lessons that I believe can really help you get the best out of yourself and the people that you lead. Because without high standards and without holding people to account on those standards, we're never going to build high performance in ourselves or build a high performance organization. You can find a link to the Lonely Leader Academy in the show notes. It is still operating at the minute with the initial founder member offer, which is just £9 per month. That price is frozen for life. For those of you in the States, obviously it calibrates at the checkout. That's about $12 a month. And for as long as you remain subscribed, irrespective of future price rises, that is all you will pay. You're not tied into a contract. You can cancel anytime if you don't feel you're getting £9 or $12 worth of value. The podcast touches on these issues. The Lonely Leader Academy goes deep on these issues. I hope you find it useful. So bringing it back to the standards analogy, if I was going to point you towards one particular episode in the back catalogue, that would be episode number 61, Set Your Standards High. It starts with us as individuals. Our actions, our words, how we conduct ourselves, we must set the standard if we aspire to have high standards in the people that we lead. The fifth theme is psychological safety. This is very much in vogue currently because, as I said earlier about standards, there's this underlying situation, if you will, where people are not comfortable giving and taking feedback. And I'm going to touch on that in more detail in a second. But as a starting point, as a foundation, we have to have psychological safety. So what does that mean? It means people are comfortable to speak up, whether they're talking to their superiors, their equals, their peers, or their subordinates. Everybody up, down the chain of command must feel comfortable being able to express what they think without fear of being attacked, criticized, or ridiculed for having the audacity to contribute and perhaps have a slightly different opinion on what should be done next, whether that's from a strategic point of view, a specific task, an idea, a vision for the future. Now, that does not mean that everybody is fully in agreement, fully aligned every minute of every day. That's totally unrealistic. But what it does mean is that we can have vigorous debate, we can argue our point, we can reflect, and we can challenge, knowing that ultimately we might not get what we want. There's always going to be a leader that has to make the final call, but we've had a chance to put our cards on the table and to contribute. Now, that might sound really simple, but it is not the norm. When I go into organizations and have the privilege of working with a senior leader, perhaps their executive team, and then you're working down into the SLT and the heads of department, and you work down through the organization, you find pockets of psychological safety where people feel very comfortable, but you also find these areas where people don't speak up, where everybody just nods, but then you can see in their body language they're not in agreement. So go and have a listen on this notion to episode 22, creating psychological safety in a team. It is a game changer. It's an X factor for you, for your team, in realizing and optimizing people's potential. If you haven't got that psychological safety, and there's a number of things I articulate in that episode to look out for, you will never truly maximize the potential of your team. And then by default, you will never truly maximize your potential because you are not an island. Doesn't matter how big or small your team is. If you're leading people, they need to be aligned with you. They need to feel comfortable. And if you're going to get the best out of them, they win, you win, the ultimate win-win. So have a listen to that episode and ask yourself honestly, do I have psychological safety in my team? And do I feel psychologically safe to challenge to the people that I report into? The sixth theme is the Achilles heel of pretty much all underperformance and underperforming individuals and organizations, and that is communication. If we don't communicate well, we do not create a sense of value in our people. We do not create the psychological safety I've just alluded to. We do not have an ability to access ideas and innovation. We do not have an ability to course correct effectively. We do not have an ability to hold people to a standard. All the things are interlinked, but if you imagine at the center of the wheel for most of the topics discussed, communication. Done well, it builds resilience. Done badly, it destroys resilience. So it'll not surprise you that there are a raft of episodes on communication, and I'll pull out a handful of them now. Episode 38, Mastering the Art of Communication. Episode 80, Feedback Culture, the Secret Weapon of High-Performing Teams, Part 1. Giving feedback, and episode 81, high performance, but from a perspective of receiving feedback. So 2 episodes, the giving and the receiving of feedback, episode 80 and 81. You then go into episode 113, connection before command. You can't just dominate and tell everyone what to do. You've got to build that connection. So there's a dotted line back into communication there, the human side of leadership. And then a recent episode, episode 124, feedback isn't bullying. Silence is worse. So many people are frightened of communicating effectively, calling a spade, telling people what they're doing well and what they're not doing well for fear of being accused of some form of bullying. But actually staying silent is far worse for you and for your team because you're not addressing underperformance, you're not holding people to a standard, you're not developing accountability and ownership, so you put more pressure on yourself as a leader and you irritate and undermine the high performers who are delivering in your team because they see underperformance going unaddressed. So it's a very, very complex area, an area that really does require you to go deep and to reflect and to think about how you're operating and then how your team is operating. So again, no surprise, we're just about to launch a new module with a raft of lessons on the Lonely Leader Academy to allow leaders to be guided through that reflection process to really start building the right communication structures for themselves to deliver up and down in their organization, but equally importantly for their team. So that I know will be a very popular aspect of the Lonely Leader Academy. So again, the links are in the show notes, but you can simply type in tll.academy, ACADEMY. It'll take you straight through to a mini website that'll tell you a bit more about that. Last but not least, I could have started with this theme, but I chose to end with it. It's the subject of clarity. I work with high performers and leaders at all levels every single day. And I would say to a man and to a lady, they're dedicated, they're passionate, they really want the best for their people, for their organization. But if I can be critical constructively, a lot of them struggle for clarity. There's so much coming at them, so much stimuli, so many emails, meeting demands. I often ask people to show me their calendar, and it's like something out of Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. There were back-to-back meetings, there are double booking, triple bookings, and I even had a client recently who had been booked no less than 5 times to be a part of 5 different meetings, all operating virtually in the same hour. Complete and utter madness. So it's understandable that in this digital connectivity world that we're now in, that actually one of the hardest things to find is clarity, because there is no separation between work and home. We used to leave the office on an evening, that was done till the following day. No longer the case with emails. 10 times worse with phones that act as our email as well as our tools for communication as a traditional telephone. And the working day merges into the working evening, which merges into the weekend. And so it's very, very difficult when we actually factor in what we do professionally and all those personal leadership roles, in terms of being a parent, a husband, a wife, a carer, a sibling, a friend. It's exhausting just saying it out loud. And then I'm telling people to find clarity. But fundamentally, if we can't take the time to say, where am I? And where am I trying to get to? In all those areas I've mentioned, personally and professionally, then we fail to build a roadmap. I use a lot of cheesy analogies. I make no apology for that. But if we have a destination, a city in your country, or indeed another country, and it's like, right, that's where we're going, we can start to build a plan. Do I need to fly? Do I need to drive? What do I need to do? We'll get there. But if, well, we're just going to keep moving forward. Well, move forward where? I know that analogy sounds so ridiculous, but that's how a lot of us are leading our lives. When I challenge people to say, what does success look like? Where were we trying to get to here? What's the destination that matters to you? I get very fluffy, wishy-washy answers. So by establishing clarity, by actually having laser focus on this is what success looks like, this is where I'm going, it gives us a sense of calm and control, because even if circumstances, professional or personally, knock us off course, we can take a deep breath and say, okay, I'm off course, but I still know my destination. I can course correct and I can get there. So there's an episode that really wraps this up on clarity, and that is episode 84, The Leadership Essential of Clarity. So there we go. 7 themes. We've got loneliness, we've got burnout, we've got the need for recovery. I know I sort of tied those 2 together, so I'm cheating. It's really 8. We've got imposter syndrome. We've got standards for you and your wider team. We've got the essence and the need of creating psychological safety. We've got the impact of communication done well and done badly, the art of giving and receiving feedback, and we've got the absolute need to establish clarity. As I said at the start of the episode, these themes pop up day in, day out. Therefore, if all of them resonate with you, that's great. Don't beat yourself up. Don't feel like, oh, well, I'm failing. Well, why? Because as I said earlier, the highest performing leaders are struggling with them. And I see that day in, day out. I hope these episodes will help you with some reflection, some actionable tools and tips you can put into play. And I sincerely hope you check out the Lonely Leader Academy to find an easy, accessible way to deepen those insights and allow you to overcome the challenges that are stalling so many of the people that I meet and that I'm working with. And finally, can I just say a huge thank you to you for being a part of the Lonely Leader community. It's my life's work, my true sense of fulfillment to try and support people's growth and development. And there are a multitude of ways we do that, through social media posts, through our email newsletter, our LinkedIn newsletter, and of course the podcast has become a huge part of that. So thank you for listening. Thank you for following the show. Thank you for those of you that are continually sharing it with your friends and peers. It means the world to me. It has been a whirlwind of 7 years, and I look forward to the next 7 years and many years beyond that. I always say that leadership on the outside starts within. I hope this content helps you reflect and truly look within to find those answers to bring the best version of you to the fore. And again, as I always say, I wish you the very best of luck on your continued journey of growth and development. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.